Princess Arya sat beneath the golden archway of the palace garden, watching ants carry crumbs across the stone pathway. Her violet eyes followed their determined march with intense focus, noting how they worked together without speaking a word. 7 years old, and she had never said anything either, not even to her mother. The Valdren people were known across 12 star systems as the Dragon Lords of Scarathia. Their scales shimmered in sunlight, their voices could shake mountains, and their wisdom had brought peace to countless worlds. But their youngest princess might as well have been carved from stone for all the sound she made. Queen Sethera paced the council chamber 3 floors above, her silver claws clicking against marble. 12 tutors had come and gone through the palace doors. 12 experts from different planets, each with impressive credentials and confident promises. Each had left defeated. Dr. Velos, the latest failure, stood before her now. The Manthari physician had 4 arms and 7 eyes, all of which had examined Arya thoroughly. His species were known as the finest minds in child psychology across the galaxy. Your Majesty, I have exhausted every method, Dr. Velos said, his voice gentle but firm. The princess shows no physical defects. Her hearing is perfect. Her brain scans reveal normal development. Yet after 3 months, I cannot reach her. Cannot or will not. The queen's tail swished with barely contained frustration. I believe she may have limitations we cannot see. Perhaps cognitive barriers that prevent language formation. Some children are simply not meant for complex thought. The words hit like ice water. Sethera's scales rippled with suppressed anger, but she kept her voice level. You are dismissed, Doctor. Your payment will be transferred. After he left, she slumped into her throne. Beyond the window, she could see Arya's small form in the garden below, still watching those ants. Other young nobles played nearby, laughing and chasing each other through flowering trees. They had long since stopped inviting the silent princess to join them. Lord Dravik, the queen's chief advisor, entered with scrolls tucked under one massive arm. His red scales were dulled with age, but his eyes remained sharp. The council grows concerned, he said without preamble. A ruler must speak, must command, must inspire. If the princess cannot do these things, she is 7 years old, Sethera snapped, and has never spoken once. Majesty, I mean no disrespect, but the court whispers. They say the gods have not blessed her, that she is unfit for any royal responsibility. She is my daughter, and we love her for that. But love does not change reality. Dravik set down his scrolls. There are facilities on the northern continent, quiet places where she could live in peace, away from expectations she cannot meet. You want me to hide her away? I want you to consider what is best for her and for Scarathia. A crown is a heavy burden, perhaps too heavy for one who cannot bear even the weight of words. The queen dismissed him with a wave, unable to continue the conversation. When she was alone, she pressed her forehead against the cool window glass and watched her daughter below. Arya had moved on from the ants. Now she crouched beside a flowering bush, gently touching the petals. Even from this distance, Sethera could see the care in those small movements. Her daughter was not empty-headed or simple. Intelligence shone in those violet eyes, but it was trapped behind walls no one could break. In the garden, Arya heard approaching footsteps and recognized the heavy tread of her combat instructor. Lessons in royal duties continued despite her silence, though most teachers spoke at her rather than to her. She stood and bowed politely, the way she had been taught. Master Torvik looked down at her with poorly concealed pity. Princess, today we practice ceremonial greetings. Watch carefully. He demonstrated the formal bow given to visiting dignitaries, explaining each movement. Arya copied it perfectly on the first try. She always did. Her body could do what her voice could not. Good, Torvik said, his tone the same one might use with a pet. You learn well, little one. Now, can you say the formal greeting? Just try. Welcome, honored guest, to the House of Valdra. Simple words. Try for me. Arya's mouth opened. She wanted to say them. The words were clear in her mind, perfectly formed and ready. But between thought and speech lay an invisible wall of glass, and the words shattered against it silently. Her throat closed. Her chest tightened. Nothing came out. Torvik sighed. Perhaps tomorrow. Go rest now. Alone again, Arya walked to the fountain at the garden's center. Goldfish swam lazy circles in the clear water. She sat on the stone edge and dangled one clawed hand into the cool liquid. The fish scattered, then slowly returned, curious about her fingers. High above, from a window no one paid attention to, while Parker watched the small princess feed the fish. He was supposed to be cleaning the upper gallery, but something about the lonely figure below had caught his attention. The human janitor had only been on Scarathia for 2 years, but he recognized sadness in any language. The child moved with such careful gentleness, as if afraid of breaking the world around her. When one fish nibbled her finger, she smiled, a small secret expression meant for no one but herself. Will returned to his cleaning cart, thoughtful. Palace life continued around him as it always did, grand and glittering and unaware of the quiet people in its margins. He was good at being unnoticed. On Earth, he had been forgettable. Here, among dragons, he was practically invisible as sunset painted the sky purple and gold. Servants came to collect Princess Arya for dinner. She rose obediently, gave the fountain one last look, and followed them inside. From her tower window an hour later, she watched Dr. Veloz's shuttle rise into the evening sky. Another expert giving up on the broken princess, a single tear rolled down her scaled cheek, catching the last light of day. She wiped it away quickly before anyone could see. Dragons are not supposed to cry, especially not royal ones. Even if they could not speak, they were expected to be strong. Below her window, in the servant quarters, Will sorted through his cleaning supplies and pulled out a worn sock with button eyes. He had made it years ago to entertain sick children at the hospital where he used to work. It seemed silly now, a grown man playing with sock puppets. But old habits died hard, and the quiet nights on an alien world sometimes felt very long that he made the puppet dance across his knuckles, its button eyes catching lamplight. Somewhere above, a princess who could not speak stared at unfamiliar stars, and neither of them knew their paths would soon cross in the most unexpected way. Will Parker had perfected the art of being invisible long before he left Earth. At 34, he stood at average height with average brown hair and an average face that people forgot 5 minutes after meeting him. This quality had served him well in his new job, where drawing attention could mean trouble. The mop swished across marble floors in steady rhythm as Will worked through the eastern corridor. Night shift suited him best. The palace slept during these hours, and he could clean without dodging important people or worrying about being in the way. His supervisor Torvik always said the same thing. Do your job, stay quiet, and never bother the royals. 2 years on Scarathia had taught Will that the Valdrin people were not unkind, just enormously powerful and largely unaware of small creatures like himself. To them, he was furniture that occasionally moved, which was fine. He had rent to pay and medical bills piling up back on Earth. His younger sister Rachel was sick, the kind of sick that required expensive treatments and constant care. The job at the children's hospital had barely covered basics, and when the hospital closed, Will had taken the first off-world position he could find. The pay was decent, the work simple, and nobody asked questions. During his break, Will sat in the small janitor's closet he had claimed as his own. Other custodians used the main break room, but he preferred this quiet space. From his locker, he pulled out fabric scraps collected over months. Old cleaning rags, torn curtains from the donation bins, buttons from the palace sewing room. His hands worked automatically, stitching and shaping. At the hospital, he had made puppets for the children too sick to play, too tired to smile. A simple cloth dog or rabbit could bring light to the darkest rooms. The doctors had thought it strange, a janitor spending breaks making toys, but the kids had loved it. Here, there were no sick children to entertain. But the habit soothed him, kept his hands busy during long nights away from home. He finished a small dragon puppet, complete with button eyes and fabric wings. It looked ridiculous next to the real Valdrin nobles, but something about it made him smile. Parker, Torvik's growl echoed down the hallway. You sleeping in there? Will shove the puppet into his pocket and grabbed his mop. Just finish the east wing, sir. Moving to the gardens next. The massive Valdrin supervisor filled the doorway, his bronze scales gleaming even in dim light. Gardens can wait. Do the royal library first. Some noble brat spilled juice everywhere. And Parker, stay out of sight. The queen is in foul mood today. Yes, sir. We'll haul the supplies toward the library, taking the long route through servant passages. These hidden corridors ran throughout the palace like veins, letting staff move without cluttering up the fancy halls. He had memorized them all in his first month. The library was vast, 3 stories of shelves packed with books and data crystals from across the galaxy. Will found the spill easily enough, a sticky purple puddle near the reading tables. As he cleaned, he let his eyes wander over the titles. Some were in languages he recognized, others in scripts that looked like abstract art. Movement caught his eye. Through the tall windows overlooking the gardens, he saw a small figure sitting alone on a bench. Even from this distance, he recognized the silver scales and careful posture. Princess Arya, the one everyone whispered about, had heard the gossip. The entire palace knew the youngest princess had never spoken. Servants debated whether she was cursed, damaged, or simply stubborn. Most felt sorry for her. Some made jokes when they thought no one was listening that he watched as she drew patterns in the dirt with a stick, her movements precise and deliberate. Not random scribbles, but actual pictures. From this angle, he could not make out details, but the care she took suggested real thought behind the images. For the next week, Will found excuses to work near windows that overlooked the gardens during evening hours. He told himself it was just curiosity, nothing more. But there was something about the lonely princess that tugged at old instincts from his hospital days. She was always alone. While other young nobles played elaborate games, Arya sat apart, arranging flowers or watching insects or drawing in the dirt. But she was not idle. Everything she did had purpose. She created patterns with stones, lined up leaves by size, built tiny structures from twigs. One evening, Will arrived at the garden bench to clean and found something left behind. A drawing, sketched in the dirt, but remarkably detailed. It showed the palace gardens from above, complete with the fountain, the flower beds, and even the stone pathways. The perspective was perfect, the proportions accurate. This was not the work of a simple mind. This was observation and skill and intelligence. Will glanced around, then carefully used his pocket communicator to take a photo before sweeping the area clean. That night in his closet, he stared at the image. The princess could not speak, but she could certainly think. She saw the world with artist's eyes and remembered details most people missed. The next evening, he found another drawing. This one showed birds in flight, their wings captured mid-motion with stunning accuracy. Again, he photographed it before cleaning. On the third evening, he arrived early and hid behind a hedge to watch. Arya came to her usual bench, looked around to make sure she was alone, then pulled out a stick and began to draw. She worked quickly, her small claws moving with confidence. This time she drew the palace itself, including towers Will had never paid attention to before. When she finished, she sat back and studied her work with critical eyes. Then, seeming satisfied, she stood and walked away, leaving the drawing for the wind to erase. Will emerged from hiding and crouched beside the artwork. Up close, it was even more impressive. She had included windows, banners, even the guards at their posts. This child saw everything and forgot nothing. "What are you doing?" Will jumped so hard he nearly fell. Torvek loomed over him, suspicious eyes narrowed. "Just cleaning, sir. Someone left marks in the dirt. Then clean them and move on." And Parker, word of advice: stay away from the royal family. All of them. You are here to work, not gawk at princesses. Understand? Yes, sir. Completely. That night, Will lay in his small quarters and stared at the ceiling. He should listen to Torvek, keep his head down, do his job, send money to Rachel, and mind his own business. Getting involved with royal affairs was a spectacular way to get fired or worse, but he could not stop thinking about those drawings. About intelligence trapped behind silence. About a child who saw the world so clearly, but could not share what she saw. That he pulled the dragon puppet from his locker and made it dance across his knuckles. At the hospital, the simplest things had reached the unreachable kids. A puppet show for a girl who would not eat. A silly voice for a boy too scared to sleep. Sometimes the answer was not complicated medicine or expert techniques. Sometimes it was just meeting someone where they were. The puppet's button eyes stared back at him, as if asking what he planned to do with this information. Nothing, Will told it firmly. Not my problem. Not my place. The puppet seemed unconvinced, but then again, it was just a sock with buttons. Will shoved it back in the locker and tried to sleep. Tomorrow he would clean the East Wing and forget about silent princesses and mysterious drawings. But the drawings haunted his dreams, and when he woke, he found himself stitching a second puppet almost without thinking. This one was smaller, with a crooked smile and one button eye slightly higher than the other. He named it Sir Squeaks the Brave, though he could not say why. It was just a puppet, just fabric and thread. It would stay in his locker, another forgotten toy made by forgettable hands. Outside his window, dawn painted the palace gold, and somewhere in a tower room, a princess who could not speak began another silent day. Libraries after midnight held a special kind of quiet, the sort that made even breathing feel too loud. Will pushed his cleaning cart between the towering shelves, grateful for the solitude. Third shift on a rest day meant the palace was nearly empty, which suited him perfectly. He had just finished the main floor when he heard it, a soft scraping sound from the upper level. Will froze, listening. Probably just the old building settling, or maybe one of the automated filing systems activating. He returned to his work. The scraping came again, followed by a small grunt of effort. Definitely not mechanical. Will abandoned his cart and climbed the spiral stairs as quietly as possible. The second level was darker, lit only by emergency strips along the floor. He scanned the shadows between shelves and spotted movement near the far wall. Princess Arya stood on a rolling ladder, stretching toward a high shelf. Her small claws gripped the rail with one hand while the other reached for a thick book just beyond her grasp. The ladder swayed slightly. Will's heart jumped into his throat. He should leave, call for a guard, anything but get involved. But the ladder tilted further, and instinct overrode common sense. He sprinted forward just as her grip slipped. The princess fell backward with a startled squeak, the first sound Will had ever heard her make, and landed in his arms. The impact sent them both stumbling, but he kept his feet and set her down gently. For 3 heartbeats, they stared at each other. Her violet eyes were huge in the dim light, shocked but not frightened. Will waited for her to scream or run or call for guards to arrest the human who dared touch royalty. Instead, she tilted her head like a curious bird, studying his face with intense focus. "Are you okay?" Will whispered, though he knew she would not answer. "That was close. You could have been hurt." Arya nodded slowly, still watching him. Her gaze dropped to his uniform pocket, where fabric poked out. Before Will realized what was happening, she reached out and tugged at it. The puppet. He had shoved Sir Squeaks into his pocket that morning and forgotten about it. Now the small dragon puppet dangled between them, its button eyes catching the light. Will felt his face heat with embarrassment. Here he was, a grown man carrying a sock puppet to work. The princess must think him completely ridiculous. But when he glanced at her face, he saw no mockery. Instead, wonder. She touched the puppet's fabric wings with one claw, gentle as touching a butterfly. "It's just something I make sometimes," Will said, feeling foolish. "For fun." "Silly, I know." Arya looked from the puppet to his face and back again. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled. Not a polite royal smile, but a genuine expression of delight. Something in Will's chest loosened. Before he could overthink it, he slipped the puppet onto his hand and made it bow to her. "Sir Squeaks the Brave, at your service, your highness." The puppet's voice came out high and silly, nothing like Will's normal tone. Arya's eyes went even wider. She reached toward it, then hesitated, looking at Will for permission. "Go ahead. He doesn't bite." She touched the puppet's head, and Will made it nuzzle against her palm like a friendly pet. A soundless laugh shook her shoulders. The sight of it sent Will back years to hospital rooms and sick children finding joy in small things that he should stop, should apologize and leave before someone found them. But the princess looked so happy, so engaged, so present in a way the palace gossip suggested she never was. Want to see something? Will pulled out another puppet, this one made from a cleaning rag with button eyes. This is Lady Whisper. She's shy but very brave. He put Lady Whisper on his other hand and made the two puppets interact. Sir Squeaks introduced himself formally while Lady Whisper hid behind his arm. Then they had a conversation about exploring the castle and what treasures might be hidden in the library. Arya watched, transfixed. When Sir Squeaks asked Lady Whisper what she thought they should do, Will paused and looked at the princess. On impulse, he held out Lady Whisper. Want to try? She hesitated for only a moment before taking the puppet. Her small claws slipped into it carefully, and she held it up, examining how it moved. Will made Sir Squeaks address her directly. Hello there, Lady Whisper. What do you think we should search for first? For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, Arya made Lady Whisper turn towards Sir Squeaks. She moved the puppet's head in a nod. Will made Sir Squeaks jump excitedly. Books about dragons? Excellent choice. They're my favorite too, being a dragon myself. Arya's Lady Whisper nodded more enthusiastically. Then she made the puppet point toward a shelf. They played like this for 20 minutes, creating a story about two friends exploring a magical library. Will voiced Sir Squeaks while Arya moved Lady Whisper, using gestures and movements to communicate. When the puppets discovered a pretend treasure, Sir Squeaks cheered and Lady Whisper did a little dance. Then footsteps echoed from the main floor. Both of them froze. Princesa, are you up there? You missed dinner. A servant by the sound of it. Will pressed a finger to his lips and pointed to the shadows. Arya nodded understanding. He slipped between shelves and disappeared into the darkness just as light bloomed below. There you are, princess. Her Majesty was worried. Come along now, back to your rooms. From his hiding spot, Will watched as Arya descended the stairs. She still wore Lady Whisper on her hand, clutching it like a treasure. The servant noticed and sked. What is that dirty thing? Give it here. But Arya shook her head firmly and held the puppet behind her back. The servant sighed, but did not press the issue. Fine, keep your toy. Let's go. After they left, Will emerged from hiding and sagged against a shelf. His hands were shaking. He had just spent 20 minutes playing puppets with a princess. If anyone found out, he would be fired at best, arrested at worst. But Arya had smiled, had engaged, had communicated through those puppets in ways she apparently could not with words. The intelligence everyone said was lacking had shown clear in how she moved Lady Whisper, telling stories without sound. Will collected his cleaning supplies in a daze. The library book Arya had been reaching for still sat on the high shelf. He retrieved it with a ladder and checked the title. Advanced Stellar Cartography. Not exactly light reading for a 7-year-old. He left it on a lower shelf, where she could reach it easily. 3 nights later, Will return to the library for normal cleaning. He did not expect to see her again. Lightning did not strike twice, and he had already pushed his luck further than wise. But there she was, sitting in a reading nook with that cartography book open in her lap. When she saw him, her face lit up. She held up Lady Whisper, still on her hand after 3 days. Will glanced around. The library was empty. He should leave. Should follow Torvek's rules and stay away from royalty. Should protect his job and his sister's medical payments and his future. Instead, he pulled Sir Squeaks from his pocket and walked over to her. Hey there, Lady Whisper. Miss me? Arya made the puppet nod so hard its button eyes bounced. And just like that, without planning or permission, a janitor and a princess became friends. The most unlikely pair in the palace, meeting in shadows, speaking through cloth and buttons and imagination. Somewhere above them, the queen paced her chambers, unaware that the solution to her daughter's silence was happening in the quiet corners of her own palace. Somewhere in the servant quarters, Torvek wondered why Will volunteered for library duty so often lately. But in that moment, none of that mattered. 2 puppets danced in lamplight, and for the first time in her life, Princess Arya found a way to speak that felt like breathing. 3 weeks passed in a blur of night shifts and secret meetings. What began as accident became routine, though a new routine was dangerous. Patterns drew attention, and attention meant questions he could not answer. Still, he could not stop. Not when Arya waited for him each night with new puppets she had made from scraps in her room. Not when her eyes shone with thoughts finally finding expression. Not when he saw her becoming more herself with each passing day. Tonight, they met in a forgotten storage room behind the library. Arya had discovered it weeks ago, and it became their sanctuary. Old furniture draped in sheets provided seats, and a small window let in starlight. Will brought a battery lamp, and Arya brought her collection. She now had 7 puppets, each with distinct personality. There was Lady Whisper, the original. Sir Squeaks the Brave, which Will had given her. A scholarly owl made from a pillowcase. A mischievous cat crafted from a torn curtain. A noble bear with button eyes. A quick-witted rabbit. And a dragon princess with silver fabric that matched Arya's own scales. Will had made several more himself. Together, they created elaborate stories, adventures that grew more complex each night. And through those stories, Will began to understand. Arya could not speak, but she could communicate. Through her puppets, she expressed ideas far beyond her years. When the Dragon Princess puppet faced challenges, Arya made her think through problems logically, showing understanding of strategy and consequence. When a mischievous cat got into trouble, she demonstrated knowledge of right and wrong, cause and effect. The words get stuck, Will said one night, after the puppets had acted out a scene about a character afraid to speak. Is that how it feels? Arya's Dragon Princess puppet nodded slowly. Then it pantomimed pressing against an invisible wall, pushing and pushing but unable to break through. It's not that you can't think the words. You just can't get them out. Another nod. The puppet slumped, defeated. Will made Sir Squeaks pat the Dragon Princess gently. That must be so frustrating. Everyone thinking you're empty when you're actually full of thoughts. The Dragon Princess puppet looked up at Sir Squeaks. Then, hesitantly, it reached out and hugged him. Arya's violet eyes met Will's over the puppets, and he saw gratitude there. You're brilliant, you know that. Will said softly. The cartography book you were reading, I looked it up. That's university-level stuff. And those drawings you make in the garden, they're incredible. You see everything. Arya ducked her head, shy at the praise. But the Dragon Princess puppet stood a little taller. Over the following nights, Will started structuring their sessions. He would pose challenges for the puppets to solve, watching how Arya worked through them. Math problems became treasure hunts. Language lessons became secret codes the puppets needed to crack. History turned into epic tales of ancient heroes. She excelled at all of it. Her puppets would discuss problems, debate solutions, and implement plans with logical precision. When she made a mistake, her characters would acknowledge it and try different approaches. This was not a limited child. This was a gifted one. Trapped behind a barrier she could not control. One evening, Will brought books from the library and had the puppets read to each other. Arya made her characters sound out complex words, stumbling occasionally, but persistent. Through Lady Whisper's fabric mouth, she pronounced terms that adult nobles struggled with. Can you read without the puppets? Will asked carefully. Arya nodded. But you can't speak without them. She shook her head, and the Dragon Princess puppet demonstrated again, pressing against that invisible wall. Will sat back, thinking. In his hospital days, he had seen kids with selective mutism. The ability to speak existed, but anxiety or trauma locked it away in certain situations. The more pressure they felt, the tighter the lock became. Royal life was nothing but pressure. Everyone watching, everyone expecting, everyone judging. No wonder her voice had frozen. What if we practice? Will suggested. Just here, where nobody's watching. The puppets talk, but you move your mouth with them, like they're helping you. Arya considered this. Then her Dragon Princess puppet nodded. They started simple. Will would have Sir Squeaks say a word, and Arya would make her puppet repeat it while mouthing the shapes. No sound came, but her lips moved correctly. After a week, tiny whispers emerged, so quiet Will almost miss them. Good. That's amazing, Arya. Keep going. The whispers grew stronger. By week 3, he could hear actual words, though they remained soft and hesitant. The puppets were bridges, letting her voice cross the gap it could not traverse alone. Then Torvek started asking questions. Parker, why are you always in the library? I assigned you to East Wing. Library takes longer, sir. Lots of shelves. 3 hours longer? Every night. I am fiddle. Torvek's eyes narrowed. You're hiding something. Don't think I haven't noticed. You volunteering for odd shifts, sneaking around quiet corners. What are you up to? Nothing, sir. Just work. You're a terrible liar, Parker. Whatever you're doing, stop it. Last warning. Will knew he should listen. The risk was enormous, and not just to himself. If caught, Arya might be punished too, isolated further, declared even more hopeless. But when he tried to stay away, he thought about her waiting in that storage room with her puppets, finally having a way to share her brilliant mind. He went anyway. 2 nights later, everything changed. They were deep in a story about puppet explorers charting unknown stars when Arya suddenly grabbed Will's arm. She pointed frantically toward the door. Footsteps. Multiple people, moving with purpose, will gather the puppets quickly while Arya stuffed hers into a bag she had started bringing. They pressed against the wall, barely breathing, as the footsteps passed. Voices drifted through the door. The queen wants every corner searched. Princess Arya is missing from her quarters. Again, this is the 3rd time this week. She keeps disappearing for hours. Her Majesty is beside herself. The guards moved on, but the danger was clear. Someone would find them eventually, and the consequences would be severe. We have to stop, Will whispered. This is too risky. Arya shook her head violently. Her dragon princess puppet grabs her squeaks and held on tight, desperate. I know. I don't want to either. But if they catch us, you'll never be allowed to leave your room. They'll lock you in, thinking it's for your safety. Tears welled in Arya's eyes. The dragon princess puppet slumped, defeated once more. But then she straightened, and Arya pulled out a piece of paper she had hidden in her bag. On it, she had written in careful script, "You are my only friend. Please." Will's resolve crumbled. He was supposed to be the adult here, the responsible one. But looking at her desperate face, he could not find the strength to walk away. "One more week," he said finally. "Then we figure out something safer." "Deal." Arya nodded and hugged him impulsively. Her small arms barely reached around him, but the gesture spoke volumes. They continued meeting, more carefully now. Will changed his schedule, took different routes, left false trails. Arya timed her disappearances better, made sure servants thought she was in bed. For one more week, the janitor and the princess played with puppets in the shadows, teaching and learning, speaking without speaking, building something fragile and precious that could not survive in daylight. But outside their small sanctuary, forces were moving. The queen's patience wore thin. The council demanded action, and Torvek watched Will with suspicious eyes, waiting for proof of what he already suspected. The week would not last long. Queen Sethera found them on the 6th night. She had been wandering the palace, unable to sleep, worrying about her daughter, who continued vanishing mysteriously. When she heard voices from the old storage room, including laughter that sounded almost like Arya's, she had to investigate. What she saw through the cracked door stopped her cold. Her daughter sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by cloth puppets. The human janitor, Parker or Porter or something, knelt across from her. They were performing some kind of show, the puppets animated and dancing. And Arya was laughing. Silent laughter, yes, but unmistakable joy. Then the janitor made his puppet ask a question, and Arya's puppet answered. Not in gestures, but in words. Quiet, hesitant words spoken through a fabric dragon, but actual words nonetheless. Sethera's breath caught. Her daughter was speaking. She watched for 10 more minutes as they played out stories of adventure and friendship. Watched her supposedly limited child demonstrate problem-solving, creativity, humor, and intelligence that sparkled like starlight. Watched her speak through those ridiculous puppets with growing confidence. When the queen finally entered, both human and princess jumped like startled rabbits. Will scrambled to his feet, puppets falling from his hands. Your Majesty, I can explain. I was just be quiet. Sethera's voice could have frozen suns. She turned to her daughter. Arya, go to your room. We will discuss this later. Arya clutched her dragon princess puppet and shook her head. The puppet pointed at Will, protective. Now, Arya. Still the princess refused, moving to stand beside the janitor. Her puppet took Will's hand. Something in that gesture broke through Sethera's anger. Her daughter, who obeyed every command without question, who never fought back or made demands, was protecting this human, choosing him over her mother's orders. Fine. Both of you come with me. She led them to her private study, a room few entered uninvited. Will look like he might pass out. Arya still gripped his hand, small claws gentle but firm. Once inside, Sethera locked the door and faced them. How long has this been happening? 3 weeks, Your Majesty, Will said, voice barely steady. I swear I meant no harm. It started by accident, and then you continued meeting my daughter in secret, hiding from guards, teaching her without permission. Yes, I'm sorry. I'll resign immediately. Just please don't punish her. This was my fault. Fault? Sethera laughed bitterly. You accomplished in 3 weeks what 12 experts could not manage in years. Do you understand what I just witnessed? My daughter spoke. She communicated complex ideas. She showed joy, and she did it because of you and your ridiculous cloth toys. Will blinked, confused. You're not angry? Oh, I am furious. Furious that a janitor succeeded where specialists failed. Furious that my daughter has been sneaking around my own palace. Furious that I am so desperate. I am grateful to a human I barely know. She sank in her chair. But I'm also a mother who just heard her child's voice for the first time. So explain to me, Parker, how you did it. Will glanced at Arya, who nodded encouragement. He took a breath and explained everything. The drawings in the garden. The observation that led to understanding. The hospital experience that taught him to meet children where they were, not where adults wanted them to be. The puppets as bridges for expression. Everyone treated her like a problem to solve, he said. But she's not broken. She just needed a different way to communicate. The pressure of being royal, of everyone staring and expecting, it locks her voice away. The puppets take that pressure off. They let her speak without the weight of being Princess Arya. Sethera listened, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she turned to her daughter. Is this true? The expectations frighten you. Arya's puppet nodded. Then it made speaking motions with its fabric mouth, pressing against an invisible barrier. Show me, Sethera commanded gently. Speak through your puppet like you did with him. Arya hesitated. Even here, even with her mother, the fear was visible. But Will gave her an encouraging nod, and she took a shaky breath through the dragon princess puppet. In a voice so quiet Sethera had to lean forward to hear, Arya said, I try, Mama. The words are there. But when I am me, they cannot come out. Tears welled in the queen's eyes. My baby, all this time I thought, she's brilliant, Will said. She reads university textbooks. She understands complex math. She creates art. She just needed someone to see her instead of her silence. Sethera wiped her eyes and straightened. This presents a problem. The council has demanded action. They want Arya sent to a facility, removed from royal responsibilities. I have been fighting them, but without proof she can function in society. She can function fine, Will protested. She just does it differently. And how do I explain that to nobles who expect traditional strength? How do I present a princess who speaks through puppets to a court that values commanding presence? The queen stood and paced. They will mock her. Call it childish. Use it as proof she is unfit. Then the court is wrong. Sethera spun to face him. You dare. With respect, Your Majesty, yes. I do dare. Because I have watched your daughter show more courage, intelligence, and heart in 3 weeks than most people display in a lifetime. If your court cannot see that because she communicates differently, the problem is not with her. Silence fell heavy in the room. Will realized he had just told a queen her entire government was wrong. He waited for the guards, the arrest, the deportation. Instead, Sethera laughed. You have spine, janitor. Foolish spine, but spine nonetheless. She sat again, thinking. Here, is what will happen. You will continue working with Arya, but officially. I will create a position, something dignified. Communication specialist, perhaps. You will teach her, help her develop this puppet method, and document your progress. Your Majesty, I'm not qualified. You are the only person qualified. You succeeded where experts failed. That is qualification enough. She turned to Arya. And you, daughter, will continue your regular lessons as well. I will not hide your gift, but you must learn to function in the world beyond puppets eventually. Arya's puppet nodded seriously. There is one more problem, Sethera continued. The council has scheduled an evaluation in 2 weeks. An inspector will determine Arya's fitness for royal education. If she fails, they will remove her from succession and send her away. I cannot stop it. Will's stomach dropped. What kind of evaluation? The traditional kind. Oral examination, demonstration of knowledge, proof of capability. Everything Arya cannot do without her puppets, and everything the inspector will not accept with them. That's not fair. No, but it is reality. Sethera looked at her daughter with a mix of love and fear. We have 2 weeks to prepare. 2 weeks to help her find a voice that ancient nobles will accept. Can you do that? Will looked at Arya, who stared back with hope and terror in her violet eyes. 2 weeks to undo 7 years of fear. 2 weeks to teach her to speak without the safety of puppets. 2 weeks to perform a miracle. He thought of his sister back on Earth, waiting for treatments he could afford because of this job. Thought of the risk, the pressure, the impossibility of the task. Then he thought of a small princess who drew pictures in dirt and spoke through cloth dragons, who smiled when she learned new things and laughed at silly puppet shows. We could try, he said. The evaluation room felt like a tomb. Gray walls, harsh lighting, a single table where Lord Krent sat with his assessment forms spread before him. The elderly Valdrin inspector had evaluated royal children for 40 years and took immense pride in his strict standards. Princess Arya stood before him, small and silent. Behind her, barely visible near the servants' entrance, Will watched with his heart in his throat. Queen Sethera sat to the side, officially observing, personally terrified. Princess Arya, Lord Krent began, his voice formal and cold. You're 7 years old. By this age, royal children are expected to demonstrate basic competencies. Do you understand why we are here today? Arya nodded. Nodding is insufficient. I require verbal confirmation. Do you understand? She opened her mouth. No sound came. The invisible wall rose before her, solid as steel. She closed her mouth and stared at her feet. Lord Krent made a mark on his forms. First question. Recite the 3 principles of the Valdrin Code. Silence. Arya's claws clenched at her sides. She knew the answer. They had practiced this 100 times. But standing here with judging eyes upon her, the words might as well have been locked in a vault. Another mark on the forms. Can you tell me the primary exports of our southern territories? Nothing. Arya's breathing quickened. Panic danced in her violet eyes. What is 7 times 8? She knew this. 56. The number blazed in her mind, but her throat closed around it, strangling the answer before it could form. Lord Krent set down his pen. Your Majesty, I believe we have seen enough. The child cannot perform even the most basic wait. Will step forward before he could stop himself. Please, just wait. Who are you? Lord Krent demanded. Will Parker, sir. Communications specialist. The title still felt strange in his mouth. Princess Arya can answer your questions. She just needs her tools. Tools? What tools? Will approached Arya slowly and knelt beside her. From his pocket, he pulled the dragon princess puppet and placed it gently in her trembling claws. It's okay. Use your voice. Your real one, not mine. Lord Krent scoffed. This is absurd. Royal evaluations do not involve toys. With respect, sir, they should. Will stood, facing the inspector. You are testing her knowledge. Yes? Not her ability to speak in the exact way you prefer. She knows the answers. Let her give them. Unacceptable. A ruler must command with presence and voice. She is both, just in a different form. Will looked at the queen. Your Majesty, please. Cythera met her daughter's desperate gaze. Everything rested on this moment. If she overruled the inspector, the council would call it favoritism. If she did not, Arya would fail, and all their work would mean nothing. Continue the evaluation, she said quietly. With the puppet, Lord Krentha's scales flushed with outrage. This is highly irregular. This is my daughter. Continue. The inspector glared, but returned to his forms. Fine. Princess Arya, state the 3 principles of the Valdrin Code. Arya held up the dragon princess puppet. Her hand shook, but she made the puppet face the inspector. Then, through the fabric dragon, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Honor, wisdom, and protection of the weak." The room went silent. Even Lord Krentha looked stunned. "The Southern Territory exports?" he asked, voice less certain. The puppet spoke again, stronger this time. "Mineral crystals, agricultural products, and technological components. 7 times 8. 56. Question after question, Arya answered through her puppet. But something shifted as she continued. The puppet's voice and her own began to merge. She started mouthing the words along with the puppet's movements, and sound leaked through. Her actual voice, not just the puppet's, noticed and caught her eye. He nodded encouragement. B. Why the 10th question, the puppet's voice and Arya's voice were speaking in unison. By the 15th, the puppet was silent, but Arya's mouth moved with it, her own quiet words emerging clear enough to hear. "Explain the formation of solar systems," Lord Krentha said, clearly trying to stump her. Arya held the puppet close, like a security blanket, but her own voice answered. "Stars form from collapsing gas clouds. Gravity pulls matter together, creating heat and pressure. When pressure is high enough, fusion begins. Remaining material forms planets, pulled by the new star's gravity." Lord Krentha blinked. "That is correct, and rather advanced for your age. I like reading," Arya whispered, puppet still pressed to her chest. "So it seems." The inspector reviewed his forms, clearly struggling with this outcome. "Your knowledge is adequate, I suppose. But this puppet business is highly unconventional." "Unconventional does not mean ineffective," Queen Cythera said. "My daughter has demonstrated competence. Is that not what you came to evaluate?" Before Lord Krentha could answer, Arya did something that surprised everyone. She lowered the puppet and looked directly at the inspector. Her voice shook, but was her own voice, clear and determined. "I am different. I know this. Speaking is hard for me in ways it is not for others. But different does not mean broken, and hard does not mean impossible. I will never command with a voice like thunder, but I can still lead with wisdom and compassion. If that is not enough, then perhaps the problem is not with me." The words were so much like what Will had said to the queen that he had to hide a smile. Arya had been listening, learning not just facts but courage. Lord Krentha stared at the small princess who had just, essentially, told him to reconsider his standards. For a long moment, no one breathed. Then the old inspector did something unexpected. He laughed. "Well, you certainly have spirit, young princess, and courage, which may be the most important quality of all." He signed his forms with a flourish. "I am passing you for royal education, with a notation that alternative communication methods be accommodated. Congratulations." Arya's eyes went wide. "Really? Really? Though I suggest you continue practicing speaking without the puppet. It may not always be available." "I will. Thank you." After Lord Krentha left, Queen Cythera swept her daughter into a fierce hug. "I am so proud of you." Will started to slip away, his job done, but Arya's voice stopped him. "Wait, please." He turned. She held out the dragon princess puppet, offering it back. "You keep it," Will said. "She's yours." "No." Arya pressed it into his hands, then pulled out another puppet she had been hiding, a human figure made from simple cloth. "We trade. So we remember." "Remember what?" "That friends help each other find their voice." All kinds of voices. 6 months later, the palace was different. Arya still used puppets sometimes, but less often. Her voice grew stronger each day, though it remained quiet by Valdrin standards. The court learned to lean in and listen, and found that the soft-spoken princess had much worth hearing. Will officially became royal communication specialist, and his methods spread to other struggling children across the kingdom. Turned out there were many who needed different ways to express themselves, and the puppet technique helped them all. That he still cleaned occasionally, out of habit, and Torvek still grumbled about his unconventional approach to everything. But the supervisor grudgingly admitted that maybe sometimes the best solutions came from unexpected places. That on quiet evenings, Will and Arya still met in their old storage room, now officially designated as the Communication Development Center. They did not always use puppets anymore. Sometimes they just talked, princess and janitor, friend and friend. Tonight, Arya practiced a speech she would give to visiting dignitaries. She stumbled over some words, grew frustrated, reached for her dragon princess puppet. "It's okay," Will said. "Take your time. They will wait. What if they think I'm weak? Then they're not paying attention. Strength comes in many forms. You taught me that." Arya smiled and tried again. The words came slower than some would like, softer than others expected. But they came honest and true and entirely her own. Outside the window, 2 moons rose over Scarathia. The palace gleamed in their light, home to dragon lords and human janitors and a princess who spoke with quiet courage. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless voices, and it was big enough for all of them, even the ones that whispered. Especially the ones that whispered, because sometimes the most important things were not shouted from towers or commanded with thunder. Sometimes they were shared in storage rooms with puppets and patients, and the kind of friendship that saw people for who they truly were. And that, Arya thought as she practiced her speech, was the best kind of strength there was.